Alright, so today I'm here to answer the question of, am I, as Heppner's Happy Hemp, going to be allowed to grow hemp on my property this year? And what does it have to do with the USDA, which is the United States Department of Agriculture? Now, before I answer that question, I think there needs to be some history given of hemp as an agricultural commodity in the United States. Now, in order to tell the story, I need to rewind a bit back to 1937. In 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act was passed by the federal government in the United States. And essentially what that did is it banned the use and cultivation of both hemp and marijuana. Now, if you previously watched my last video where I detailed the differences between hemp and marijuana and how it's directly correlated back to the percent of THC, at least by lawyer terms, you'll know that, hey, there is a difference. But you have to ask yourself the question, back in 1937, do you think there was a really easy way of testing the percentage of THC? Probably not. So, by the 1950s, after World War II, there was pretty much, hemp farming had pretty much disappeared altogether on the continental United States. Now we're going to fast forward a bit to 2014, and in 2014, President Obama signed the Farm Bill, and the Farm Bill acknowledged the potential of hemp as a commercial crop, and at the same time created the framework for how to legally cultivate hemp. But it wasn't until 2018 when President Trump actually signed the Hemp Farming Act, which was nested inside the 2018 Farming Bill, which you've heard me talk about before. And when he signed that Hemp Farming Act in 2018, it did two really good things. Number one was it pulled hemp off of the Schedule I list of controlled substance. The banned substance for Schedule I, it pulled them off that list, which also contained cocaine and heroin. And number two, what it did was it legalized the production of hemp as an agricultural commodity. Now, if you're familiar with my previous video where I talked about the difference between hemp and marijuana, you realize that the 2018 Farm Bill also had to come up with some way of differentiating hemp and marijuana, since it pretty much is the same thing. And that bill also was the one that contained, hey, if it's less than 0.3% THC, you got yourself hemp. If it's higher than 0.3% THC, you got yourself some marijuana. So that also was instituted in that Farm Bill. However, just because the federal government passed the 2018 Farm Bill and said, hey, we can grow hemp now, it's a legal product, doesn't necessarily mean that every farmer in every single state had the opportunity and potential to grow it. Instead, that comes down to state-level legislation. In fact, in 2019, only 3 states actually prohibited growing hemp altogether. So in 2019, a majority of the states allow it and only 3 don't allow it. That's Idaho, Mississippi, and South Dakota. Now, the states that are allowed to grow hemp, they usually fit into one of 3 programs, and that's a commercial program, a research program, and finally a pilot program. Now I want to get into the differences between commercial, research, and pilot. And I know you might be saying to yourself, hey Jacob, I thought we were here to talk about can you grow hemp this year? I promise you, this will all make sense once I get finished with it. But first we need to get into the differences between commercial, research, and pilot. Now I did a lot of research on these 3 separate entities and levels in the state level legislation. And the fact of the matter is, when I did a lot of research, to me, research and pilot was very synonymous. It meant sort of the same thing, and state by state adopted different kind of verbiage, but essentially it was the same program. And research and pilot was essentially used in states that were a little bit unsure. They might be pressured into adopting the hemp program by farmers, by other legislators, whoever is helping them and pressuring them to adopt it, but they're not really sure on the outcome, they're not sure how to police it, and so instead they put a pilot program or a research program in with the goal of saying, okay, let's try it out for a year, see how well this goes, and at the end of the year we'll reconvene, see how well we did, and maybe make a decision on if we want to go commercially or stay with the pilot program, research program, or just completely eliminate it. So a pilot and research is kind of like a state's entry level into hemp farming. Now, there for sure exist a lot of differences between commercial compared to research and pilot. Research and pilot, the goal of it, like I mentioned, was to get an idea of if we want to do it. And because of that, the farmer was required to do a lot of extra work if they were granted a research or pilot license. And they had to send in a lot of samples, soil samples. They had to send in like THC data on the weekly. There was a lot of extra paperwork requirement, background checks, and a lot of extra work for the farmer because the state was trying to determine, okay, is this going to be good for us? Let's really make sure we vet everyone doing this, and let's make sure they deliver a lot of data to us so we can make an informed decision later on if we want to do the commercial program. Whereas, where this is a lot of paperwork intensive and a lot of extra work for the farmer, the commercial program is a lot less intrusive, a lot less intensive, and has a lot less paperwork, and sometimes is a bit cheaper. So now you might be asking yourself, okay, how do I determine my state, where I'm at in my state? I'll put a link down below where you can look it up and see where your state is at if you are in a pilot program, a research program, or commercial program. So now that you guys are armed to the teeth with all that extra information dealing with the history of hemp and state legislation, all that stuff, I want to get into our actual circumstance right now. So as you know, Heppner's Happy Hemp, which is on my property, we live in Kansas. And so in 2019, the state of Kansas adopted a pilot program and also adopted the Industrial Hemp Research Program. Like I mentioned, both of those kind of programs are very data intensive and paperwork intensive and sample size intensive from the farmer. And so when we kind of decided to start doing hemp, we did a little bit of research, and I made the mistake of not doing the due diligence of doing really in-depth research and actually missed the deadline. So the deadline for the 2020 growing season for Kansas for the Industrial Hemp Research Program was November 30th. And my excuse was, it was right after the open, it was right before going to China for sanctionals, and it completely blanked. I didn't think there was going to be a deadline, and I didn't do my due diligence and research. And so at that time in mid-December and January, we thought to ourselves, okay, well, is all hope lost? Like, if we miss the deadline, is that it? Can we not grow hemp at all? Like, because we missed the deadline? And actually, in January 23rd, we had a little ray of sunshine here, and the fact that the Kansas Department of Agriculture, or KDA for short, actually submitted paperwork to the USDA, which again is the United States Department of Agriculture, to be inducted into the U.S. Domestic Hemp Production Program. It's just a lot of memorization for words here, guys. So anyways, KDA submitted paperwork and said, hey guys, we want to be included in the commercialization, the commercial side, not the research, not the pilot. We've done that for a year. Now we're looking to get involved in the commercial side. So Kansas is saying, okay, we want to adopt we want to adopt the commercial license. And so they submitted paperwork to the USDA saying, hey, this is how we're going to framework. This is the framework we're going to use for our state. Is this okay? The best part is, I actually talked to someone from Pure Spectrum, Brady Bell, who actually knew a lot of information. And he actually said that Kansas actually submitted the least intrusive, or the least, like with a lot of rules, least intrusive version of USDA's commercial program, meaning they're giving a lot of extra freedom to the farmer, which is good from my perspective. So right now it's kind of a waiting game. So KDA has submitted their paperwork to USDA, and right now we're just in a waiting game to see if the United States Department of Agriculture will accept the Kansas Department of Agriculture's plan to adopt a commercial license for the state. If they do accept it, so if the USDA says, stamp of approval, you're good to go, Kansas, you're good to go, then the application for having a commercial license will open up, and Heppner's Happy Hemp, us here in Kansas, will have the opportunity to apply for it and then grow hemp in the 2020 season. Now, of course, that comes down to how long it takes. I know that USDA started approving states' applications for commercial licensures in like November, December. Of course, that's over the Christmas season, and we just submitted in pretty much the end of January. So hopefully in the next month or so we will know, because like we know, and as I mentioned before, growing season is end of April, mid-May, and so we need to know pretty soon if it's something we can do so we can jump on it. So all that to say, all is not lost, and we're looking forward to this season to kind of see what happens. If you want more information dealing upon your state's legislation and the rules that you may have not know for your state, wherever you live at, I'll have a lot of links down below. You make sure to kind of peruse them, and a lot of the links I use to glean my information, so you know you can fact check me, see if I'm right, and disagree with me if you want to. Anyways, guys, have a great day, and we'll talk to you guys later. See ya.